What if I told you that everything you've ever believed about surviving in the wild is a complete lie? Glad to have you here on the channel. Today we're going to take a trip back in time to debunk yet another long-held stereotype we've believed for years. From childhood, we were taught, and for a long time it was believed, that water on the harsh prairie always meant absolute safety, salvation, and an abundance of life. It seems like a basic rule of any survival show: find a water source and you'll live. But don't jump to conclusions. For the seasoned inhabitants of the Great Plains, this seemingly obvious law of nature worked quite differently, literally defying common sense. If you also love solving historical mysteries and breaking stereotypes, hit the like button on this video right now and be sure to subscribe to the channel. There are many incredible discoveries ahead. Don't switch channels under any circumstances. Watch this video all the way to the end. In the finale, I'll reveal a shocking secret. What exactly awaited people along the riverbanks, and how this paradoxical rejection of the river's coolness became the key to preserving the entire tribe's survival. Share your guesses in the comments, and let's get started. I'm going to reveal the best-kept secret. While studying the roots of ancient nomadic migrations, researchers have noticed a strange pattern in the choice of summer campsites. The camps were almost always located at a considerable distance from the water's edge. The soft ground near the water perfectly preserved any hoof prints or leather moccasin prints. This turned the shoreline into an open book for any ill wishers. No group could approach a body of water without leaving clear evidence of their presence. The wet ground recorded not only the fact that people had passed through or that cargo had been moved. Based on the depth of the tracks, an experienced tracker could easily determine the number of riders and the degree of their fatigue. The settled mud revealed the exact length of time the group had spent at the river watering hole. In summer, riverbanks turned into natural traps for those trying to remain hidden. Heavy horses sank into the soft clay, losing their ability to maneuver and accelerate. Such a delay could cost an entire detachment of explorers of the boundless prairie their freedom. There is a known case where a small group decided to break this important unspoken rule. They set up camp in a bend of a full-flowing river to save time for rest. In the morning, their deep tracks in the wet sand were easily spotted by a hostile detachment. The sticky bank prevented them from quickly turning their horses around for an organized retreat to the plateau. The group lost all their supplies and was forced to flee on foot through the canyons. This harsh lesson was forever etched in the community's memory as an example of unacceptable carelessness. The social norms of that time strictly regulated the routes each person took. Senior leaders carefully chose paths, avoiding potentially dangerous river valleys. Any unauthorized deviation from the approved route was severely condemned by the entire vast community. The group's survival depended directly on the strict discipline of every single participant in the journey. A violator put not only himself but all his companions at great risk. Therefore, the unwritten rules of movement were followed by people absolutely unquestioningly and without fail. Attention to the smallest details of the landscape was the cornerstone of the steppe defensive strategy. Every hill or depression was assessed by the leaders solely from the perspective of safety. The river was viewed more as an obstacle to be crossed quickly than as a place to camp. A prolonged stop near the water was immediately considered a sign of the leaders' incredible inexperience. A successful expedition required constant, rapid movement across all dominant heights. It was there that the best possible visual overview of the entire surrounding unfamiliar territory was ensured. Tradition dictated treating the river with the utmost respect and extreme caution. Its banks were always considered a transitional zone, belonging to no specific tribe. Staying there too long meant defying the harsh laws of the prairie. Wise leaders fully understood the hidden threat lurking in the soft riverbank silt. They preferred long treks in intense heat to the risk of leaving a clear, telltale trail. This decision was based on a deep understanding of the logic of the constant struggle for open territory. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these camouflage methods. What's your perspective, and what do you think of these ancient tactical decisions? Do you agree with the arguments presented about the importance of stealth on soft ground? Write about it in the comments below our new video. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss other historical investigations. Watch until the next chapter to find out how ordinary river noise led to a disaster. Are you ready to learn the truth about the hidden threat of an ordinary stream? The sound of running water is always associated with peace and natural tranquility. However, for a prairie dweller, this constant noise posed a tremendous, deadly danger. The constant hum of the current completely drowned out other, more important sounds of the endless prairie. Hearing was the primary tool for survival in the harsh conditions of limited nighttime visibility. Losing the ability to hear an intruder approaching was tantamount to voluntarily giving up reliable protection. At night, the river sounded especially loud due to changes in the temperature of the cold air. This steady, natural background noise created an illusion of safety and lulled the sentries into a false sense of security. The crack of a broken dry branch or the quiet step of a moccasin was completely drowned out by the lapping of the waves. An enemy could approach the vast camp very closely while remaining absolutely and completely unnoticed. That is precisely why experienced scouts always strictly avoided spending the night near noisy, rocky rapids. The silence of the boundless steppe was their best and most reliable ally in the darkness. There is a detailed account of an extremely instructive incident from ancient oral traditions. A young, inexperienced leader decided to set up camp near a picturesque waterfall. Against the advice of the elders, deep into the night, a large hostile force crept up to within arm's reach. The roar of the heavy falling water completely masked the sounds of their large-scale cavalry movement. The camp was taken by surprise and instantly lost all its valuable gathered possessions. Since then, even in the driest of summers, people have avoided this ill-fated place. Plains tactics had always been based on detecting any approaching threat as early as possible. A man standing on a high hill in absolute silence could hear a detachment approaching. The strong wind carried even the slightest rustle perfectly, allowing them to prepare in advance for the inevitable encounter. By the river, this unique natural radar completely ceased to function properly. The roaring water seemed to place a soundproof helmet over people's heads, cutting them off from the outside world. Such sound insulation was completely unacceptable in conditions of fierce territorial competition. In addition to the sound of the current, a full-flowing river was always accompanied by other distracting noises. The wind rustled loudly through the thick thickets of riverside willows, creating a continuous cacophony of sounds. The crackling of falling dry trees and the loud whispering of the reeds made it difficult to concentrate on observation. In the open prairie, however, the overall soundscape was always clear and easy to interpret. The absence of tall trees allowed the wind to blow completely freely, without creating unnecessary noise. This enabled the lookouts to distinguish every suspicious, unnatural rustle with maximum clarity. Discipline in the vast camp also required maintaining a certain strict acoustic environment. Commands were given exclusively in a quiet voice, or through special signals that did not attract unnecessary attention. The roar of the rushing stream forced people to raise their voices significantly, violating the strict rules of concealment. Loud conversations could easily be heard by enemy scouts on the opposite bank. This created a huge additional threat of detection and a sudden, brutal attack. Therefore, quiet spots as far away from the riverbeds as possible were valued much more highly by the people. The acoustics of deep river valleys often distorted the true direction of sound waves. The ringing echo from steep banks or tall trees greatly confused trackers. Determining the exact hidden source of a suspicious noise became a nearly impossible task. A cunning enemy could use this unique feature of the landscape to create false maneuvers. In the completely open steppe, any sound traveled in a straight line and was always reliable. It was much harder for a trained ear to misjudge the correct direction there. Awareness of this constant danger was carefully passed down from generation to generation. People spent a long time learning to listen to the silence and not to trust the deceptive, echoing sound of water. In the next chapter, you will learn why the dense thickets along the shore became the perfect trap. How much do you think hearing is more important than sight in the wild? Every opinion is valuable for our understanding of historical facts. What I am about to show you is prohibited in 12 countries. The riparian zone of full-flowing rivers on the plains is always covered with dense thickets of shrubs. This green strip seems like excellent natural shelter from the scorching summer sun, but for a cavalry unit, it instantly turned into a veritable impassable wall. The dense vegetation severely restricted movement and deprived them of their main advantage, tremendous speed. Inside these tangled thickets, a person became extremely slow and very vulnerable. Natural visibility in such woody thickets was limited to just a few meters. An enemy scout could easily hide behind a thick tree trunk within arm's reach. It was practically impossible to spot an approaching danger in time amid the tangled branches and deep shadows. An enemy who arrived at the scene first always had an absolute and undeniable positional advantage. He could choose the perfect moment for a surprise attack while remaining completely invisible. The open prairie, on the other hand, gave the enemy no chance for such effective concealment. The trunks of old fallen trees and protruding roots created enormous, impassable barriers. Moving across such difficult terrain required the utmost caution and slowed the pace considerably. During a sudden, urgent retreat, these natural obstacles instantly became fatal. A stumbling horse always meant the certain loss of valuable property or even personal freedom. The perfectly smooth expanse of the steppe allowed for maximum speed at any necessary moment. This freedom of rapid movement was valued by people above all other earthly comforts. In addition, the tallest trees by the river served as excellent visual landmarks. The thick smoke from a fire lit among the branches was clearly visible from a great distance. In the open steppe, camps were always situated in low-lying areas where the smoke quickly dissipated in the wind. Coastal vegetation, on the other hand, trapped the smoke, creating a tall, visible column. This completely exposed the camp and attracted unwanted attention from the entire vast surrounding area. Taking cover in the forest always resulted in a complete and unconditional loss of tactical concealment. The ability to correctly read the landscape was strictly mandatory for every adult participant in the trek. Dense thickets were always classified by the leaders as hidden high-risk zones. They were to be crossed as quickly as possible and only in cases of absolute necessity. Prolonged stops to rest in such places were strictly forbidden by ancient unwritten rules. The safety of the entire group depended on maintaining constant, clear visual control of the horizon. Dense trees deprived them of this vital control, effectively rendering people blind. The final choice was always made in favor of open spaces governed by predictable laws. There were absolutely no unexpected obstacles in the form of tangled branches or thickets. There, the full potential of a fast and strong horse could be realized. This concept of spatial freedom completely defined all aspects of their incredibly complex culture. The river, with its dense green wall, was always perceived as a foreign and hostile environment. They would go down there only for a strict and absolutely necessary reason. Like this video, if you genuinely admire such a well-thought-out survival strategy. Such foresight helped preserve the community during the harshest and most difficult historical periods. In the next chapter, you'll learn how water itself could suddenly become a deadly weapon. Do you think this tactic of avoiding trouble can be considered absolutely correct? Don't forget to share the video with your friends and leave your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to continue exploring ancient secrets. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about. The Great Plains have always been known for their extremely unpredictable weather conditions during the summer. Exhausting heat can suddenly give way to the strongest dark thunderstorms raging far away in the mountains. Water from these downpours rushes incredibly rapidly down the canyons into the beds of the plains rivers. A flash flood occurs when a dry stream turns into a raging torrent in a matter of minutes. This dangerous natural phenomenon left no chance for those who set up camp too close. A storm could pass dozens of kilometers from the chosen campsite without dropping a single drop. The sky above the camp remained completely clear, and the sun continued to beat down with its usual intensity. People might have been completely unaware of the enormous mass of muddy water approaching from the mountains. A wave several meters high crashed onto the shore with an incredibly deafening roar. It swept away everything in its path, carrying off valuable tents, food supplies, and equipment. The absence of any direct signs of danger made this water phenomenon particularly cruel and treacherous. Constant vigilance helped to accurately determine safe boundaries for setting up tents. Experienced trailblazers carefully examined the trunks of riverside trees for old watermarks. Dry debris stuck high in the branches clearly indicated the maximum level of past floods. It was strictly forbidden to cross this invisible line when choosing a place to rest. The vast camp was always situated exclusively on high terraces where the water could not reach. This caution was dictated solely by centuries of bitter experience in dealing with the elements. Summer downpours were also often accompanied by strong squall winds that snapped old, dry branches. Falling trees posed a huge additional threat to those in the floodplain. On the open plateau, the wind had none of this destructive force due to the absence of obstacles. Tents set up on the steppe withstood the harshest squalls thanks to their streamlined shape. In the forest, however, nature itself became a dangerous adversary, bringing heavy trunks crashing to the ground. Maximum safety once again categorically demanded an immediate retreat to open ground. The anticipation of a sudden flash flood would keep people in a constant and extremely exhausting state of tension. The inability to relax had an extremely negative effect on the morale of the entire large group. A peaceful, sound sleep had always been the main key to regaining strength after long daytime treks. On the high plateau, absolutely nothing threatened the peaceful rest of the vast nomadic camp. The complete absence of fear of the elements made the steppe a much more attractive place to live. The river was perceived as an extremely unpredictable force that was best left entirely alone. Knowledge of the region's geography made it easy to predict the behavior of various steppe water bodies. Some riverbeds were more prone to sudden flash floods due to the steepness of the mountain slopes. These dangerous geological areas were marked on the invisible mental map of every experienced group leader. Routes were planned to minimize time spent in potential flood zones as much as possible. Crossing such turbulent rivers was done as quickly as possible and only in absolutely clear weather. No prolonged delays in low-lying areas were permitted under any circumstances. This knowledge fostered a unique culture of careful attention to personal safety under any conditions. No competent leader would risk their lives for the sake of the illusory comfort of relaxing by the water. In the next chapter, you'll learn why the predictability of events was more terrifying than any destructive storm. Do you think many people would have been able to survive by relying solely on observing nature? Share your opinion in the comments below this informative video. In the vast open spaces, the main advantage of any mounted unit was its complete unpredictability. Moving across the endless rocky plateau allowed them to choose from hundreds of completely different routes. No one could know for sure exactly where the group would suddenly appear the next day. The river, however, was a clear geographical line that inevitably drew everyone's attention. A prolonged stop near the water completely deprived the people of this crucial tactical unpredictability. Enemy scouts always knew exactly where to look for those seeking a bit of cool relief. Summer watering holes served as powerful natural magnets, not only for animals, but also for people. During the hottest time of the year, all paths inevitably led to the few sources of moisture. An ambush at a convenient gentle slope down to the river was guaranteed to bring success to the attackers. The enemy had absolutely no need to scour the steppe in search of faintly discernible tracks. It was enough simply to take up an advantageous position near the bank in advance and be patient. Anyone who came to the water on their own automatically fell into a carefully and skillfully prepared trap. The valleys of the lowland rivers often took the form of very deep canyons with steep slopes. The descent to the water always took place along narrow paths, along which it was impossible to move in a wide formation. A large detachment stretched out into a long chain, becoming extremely vulnerable to sudden flanking attacks. Once at the very bottom of the canyon, people were completely unable to retreat quickly back up. The high, steep banks formed natural walls, blocking any attempts to evade a clash. The landscape's geometry always worked exclusively in favor of those who controlled the high ground in advance. That is precisely why camps were set up far from known natural landmarks and popular crossing points. The plateau had no distinct geometric lines capable of suggesting the direction of a large group's movement. A camp could be pitched in any hollow, indistinguishable from thousands of others. Finding such a hidden campsite without knowing specific details was a matter of incredible luck. The steppe always offered an endless number of options for creating temporary safe havens. This spatial variability nullified absolutely all efforts by enemy observers. Constant relocation was a basic rule of survival in extremely harsh conditions. The camp never remained in one specific place for more than a few days in a row. Returning to the river always meant returning to a previously passed, well-known point. Such behavior completely undermined the entire logical concept of unpredictable nomadic movement. Movement was to be directed only forward, toward new, safe high ground. A delay near the water was perceived as treading water, which was extremely dangerous for the group's well-being. The open space allowed scouts to spot any attempt to encircle the group in advance. Lookouts on the hills monitored the horizon around the clock for tens of kilometers in all directions. In the event of a threat, experienced leaders could choose the safest route of retreat. At the bottom of a deep river valley, the horizon was severely limited by the nearest bend in the riverbed. An encirclement could occur completely unnoticed, depriving the men of even the slightest, most insignificant chance of escape. The difference in safety was too obvious to continue naively ignoring it. The logic of survival demanded completely eliminating any factors that might make the task easier for a treacherous enemy. The river was too convenient a natural landmark to thoughtlessly use it as a base. Abandoning the water was a deeply conscious choice in favor of tactical invisibility and mobility. The vast plateau offered generous freedom of movement, whereas the coast imposed strict constraints. This striking contrast defined the entire philosophy of movement across the vast prairie. Every decision made by the leaders was based solely on an assessment of the possible actions of unseen competitors. Are you ready for the shocking truth? The sweltering summer heat on the plains is an incredibly severe test for any organism. It seems perfectly logical to seek refuge from the heat in the shade of the riverside trees by the water, but the reality of the microclimate in the deep river valleys was the exact opposite of what inexperienced travelers expected. In the lowlands, the air became completely stagnant, creating the effect of a giant, humid greenhouse that wore the body down. Staying there for a long time was physically much harder than being out in the open sun. The rocky steppe plateau offered a completely different climate despite the complete lack of shade. Constant strong winds ensured continuous circulation of dry and relatively cool air. This giant natural fan quickly evaporated moisture, helping the body effectively cope with overheating. The horses felt much better in the cool breeze, conserving energy for long treks. People could calmly repair their equipment and attend to other tasks without suffering from the heat. The wind instantly became their main reliable ally in the struggle against the harsh climate. There is a recorded instance when a group attempted to wait out a heat wave at the very bottom of a canyon. After a few days in the humid, stifling heat, the people completely lost all their ability to work. The horses became incredibly sluggish and refused to move quickly, even in the face of danger. When they had to leave the camp in a hurry, they were unable to reach the necessary speed to save themselves. This harsh lesson clearly demonstrated that what seemed like protection from the sun could prove fatal. Without a saving breeze, the moisture turned into an invisible but extremely effective enemy. Nighttime temperatures also varied greatly depending on the terrain. In the lowlands, heavy, cold and damp air accumulated at night, chilling them to the bone. The sharp contrast between the stifling daytime heat and the damp nighttime cold severely undermined their health. On the highlands, the dry steppe air cooled evenly, creating excellent conditions for sound sleep. The absence of constant dampness allowed one to rest without a high risk of catching a cold on the cold ground. The climate of the open plateau was significantly more predictable and safer for permanent residents. To obtain water on the vast plateau, they relied on knowledge of hidden springs and natural reservoirs. Rainwater collected perfectly in rock depressions, forming small but incredibly pure springs. These secret, inconspicuous places were passed down through generations and guarded more strictly than any other secrets. Access to such hidden water eliminated the need to descend into dangerous river valleys. A group could exist completely self-sufficiently on the highlands for weeks on end without experiencing thirst. This ensured complete independence from large bodies of water and their highly dangerous microclimate. The choice was always clear: the harsh but extremely healthy climate of the open steppe. The wind generously allowed them to breathe freely and protected them from the destructive effects of the humid summer heat. The river remained far below, forever trapped within its stifling banks, as if in a natural trap. Wise leaders understood perfectly well that comfort is deceptive and true safety requires constant vigilance. They led their people to places where nature constantly helped rather than hindered their readiness. This knowledge became the solid foundation of their unique adaptation to the harsh conditions of the continental climate. The plateau's climatic shield reliably protected people from the treachery of humid and heavy air. Every detail of their complex way of life was completely subordinated to this strict understanding of the laws of the environment. In the next chapter, you'll learn how social discipline upheld these harsh but life-saving rules. Do you think you could give up obvious comforts for the sake of your own safety? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video. The survival of a vast community on the prairie could not depend on the random desires of individuals. Society relied on an incredibly strict system of rules that regulated every step of the nomadic life. The ban on lingering near water in the summer was one of the strictest laws. Violating it was viewed not merely as an unfortunate mistake, but as a direct threat to the tribe's existence. Individualism in such critical matters was ruthlessly suppressed for the sake of the common good and maximum safety. Every participant in a long expedition learned this system of priorities from a young age through oral traditions. Senior mentors constantly and methodically emphasized the importance of unity in making the most complex tactical decisions. Any attempt to break away from the main group and go down to the water was regarded as a sign of unforgivable weakness. The leaders possessed absolutely unquestionable authority regarding the choice of route and specific campsites. Discipline was successfully maintained not through fear of punishment, but through a profound understanding of shared interests and threats. There are many ancient stories of how those who violated this prohibition were subjected to the harshest public censure. If someone took the horses to the wet shore without permission, they were immediately stripped of the right to participate in council meetings. In the most extreme cases, the guilty party could be temporarily expelled from the camp, left alone to face the dangers of the prairie. This extremely harsh method of discipline reliably ensured unquestioning compliance with vital instructions. The common collective well-being was always placed incomparably above a warrior's fleeting comfort or personal whim. These complex rules did not arise out of thin air. They were paid for dearly through the bitter experience of previous generations. Every loss resulting from an attack or a sudden flood greatly strengthened the belief in the correctness of the steppe route. A full-flowing river was perceived as a dangerous taboo zone during the hot months, a territory closed to visitors. This strict restriction was highly effective in focusing attention on safer resources in the highlands. Social norms always served as an invisible shield, reliably protecting the tribe from fatal mistakes. The ability to fully control one's physical desires was considered the highest virtue of a true, experienced leader. Enormous endurance in the face of intense thirst and heat was cultivated through a system of complex physical trials. People took genuine pride in their unique ability to endure hardship for the sake of maintaining their collective secrecy and elusiveness. This phenomenal inner strength made them incredibly formidable opponents for those who depended on watering holes. The mindset of constantly overcoming difficulties lay at the very foundation of their incredible mobility and tactical superiority. The structure of the vast camp was also entirely subject to the strict requirements of rapid movement across completely arid terrain. Leather tents were pitched and taken down with incredible speed, allowing them to vanish at the first sign of danger. Being near a river with its muddy, sticky banks instantly disrupted this well-oiled mechanism of collective work. In the dry steppe, however, the process of mass migration looked like an incredibly coordinated dance of hundreds of trained people. Everyone knew exactly their place and their duties, without being distracted in the slightest by the need to overcome natural obstacles. Thus, the choice of a specific route was not only a complex geographical decision, but also a deeply social act. It openly demonstrated the immense strength of spirit and commitment to shared values of a vast, independent tribe. The river beckoned with its welcome coolness, but the law strictly demanded that they remain on the harsh, windswept plateau. This test of strict discipline excellently tempered their characters and prepared them for more serious life challenges. They defeated their numerous enemies, not only with weapons, but also with incredible internal collective organization. Strict adherence to the rules ensured that the group would reach autumn without painful losses. When the exhausting heat subsided, the logic of their movements changed radically depending on the season. The steppe bestowed its generous gifts upon those who knew how to wait and show incredible patience. The art of survival lay in the ability to turn away from what seemed most appealing at the moment. This philosophy became their main invisible weapon in the struggle for the boundless expanses of the prairie. Many researchers ask the logical question of how these massive camps managed entirely without full-flowing rivers. The answer lies in a phenomenal and incredibly deep knowledge of the geography and hydrology of the arid, rocky highlands. The plateau was by no means a completely waterless desert. It reliably harbored many springs hidden from prying eyes. These secret rock reservoirs allowed large groups to maintain complete tactical autonomy during the hottest months. The ability to find such water was the most important secret to survival, far from the very dangerous river valleys. After heavy spring rains, clean, cool water always remained in many deep rock depressions. Experienced trackers knew by heart the exact location of every such natural well within hundreds of kilometers. They compiled a complex, invisible mental map upon which the entire long summer route of their nomadic movements was based. These water sources were completely invisible from a distance, which entirely ruled out the possibility of an ambush by treacherous rivals. The camp could replenish its water supplies in complete peace and move on, remaining completely unnoticed. In addition to the rocky stone pools, there were underground cold springs gushing at the very bottom of deep steppe ravines. The water in them was incredibly fresh and clean, completely unaffected by the scorching summer sun. Access to these springs was often concealed by thick grass or rocks to protect them from enemies. Knowledge of these secret locations was passed down only to trusted leaders and was of immense value to the entire tribe. Whoever possessed a complete map of the hidden springs held dominion over the entire vast and boundless steppe. The diet was also adapted as much as possible to the conditions of very limited water intake during the dry summer months. Preference was always given to well-dried meat, which did not cause intense thirst after consumption. Knowledge of steppe plants containing life-sustaining sap was extremely helpful in maintaining energy balance during long treks. The roots and thick stems of certain herbs could temporarily serve as a substitute for a full sip of cold water. This comprehensive dietary adaptation allowed people to feel incredibly comfortable, far from large bodies of water. Horses of local steppe breeds also possessed incredible endurance and the ability to make do with very little. They knew how to independently find precious moisture in the succulent roots of meadow grasses growing on the slopes of ravines. Their phenomenal ability to withstand intense heat was the result of long-term selective breeding and incredibly harsh natural selection. For their modest water intake, small, muddy puddles left behind after rare summer thunderstorms were quite sufficient. The self-sufficiency of the horses was a key factor that always ensured the independence of the entire vast, populous nomadic community. By avoiding rivers, the people completely deprived the enemy of its most important advantage, precise knowledge of their location. In the steppe, they literally vanished, turning into elusive ghosts that appeared only at their own will. This created a powerful psychological effect of intimidation for absolutely everyone who tried to compete with them. No one wanted to have anything to do with an enemy capable of surviving where others simply perished. The autonomy of the plateau made them the true, rightful masters of the vast expanses of the Great Plains. Sacrificing abundance for independence is a striking example of human adaptability. They chose the difficult path to ensure maximum safety for themselves and their children. Every drop of water extracted from the rock was more valuable than a river current harboring a hidden threat. Their strategy proves that reasonable restraint often becomes the key to long-term prosperity. This harsh wisdom permeated every aspect of their complex and incredibly effective culture. The ability to live self-sufficiently became a symbol of their resilience and the unyielding spirit of the prairie. Only the most prepared could challenge nature and emerge victorious from this struggle. Their hidden roots still inspire awe among historians and researchers of the past. They proved that true strength lies in the ability to harness the landscape's hidden potential. This knowledge allowed them to dominate vast territories for centuries. The strict summer avoidance of riverbanks was not absolute and applied only during periods of unbearable heat. When the sweltering heat subsided and autumn arrived, their movement strategy underwent completely radical and logical changes. The leaves on the shrubs fell, stripping the shoreline of its intimidating and previously impenetrable green wall. The ground froze solid, turning the sticky riverbank mud into a firm and very reliable footing for the horses. The risk of leaving deep, treacherous tracks vanished completely, opening up long-awaited access to the resources of the waterways. The autumn river instantly became a completely different place, far more predictable and safe for the camp. The water level stabilized, and the constant, deadly threat of devastating, sudden, large-scale mountain floods vanished. The trees, having lost their foliage, no longer blocked the view at all, allowing the lookouts to see the horizon through the bare branches. The wind blew freely through the deep river valleys, quickly carrying away the heavy, stagnant, humid air. Staying by the river ceased to be an exhausting and extremely grueling test of endurance for the body. Moreover, in the fall, huge herds of animals gathered near the gently flowing rivers, also seeking shelter from the approaching cold. Hunting instantly became more productive and required significantly less energy for long, exhausting journeys. The meat they obtained could be frozen perfectly by making good use of the natural cold of the approaching long winter. Competition with other hostile groups decreased significantly, as absolutely everyone was busy preparing their own camp. Territorial disputes instantly took a back seat in the face of the new, shared natural threat of the cold. Very detailed descriptions of the process of mass migration of huge camps during the cold autumn period have survived. Hundreds of people would simultaneously leave the high ground and descend in a highly organized manner into the deep river canyons. This complex transition was carefully planned in advance and carried out in strict accordance with traditional customs. The widest sections of the valleys were chosen, capable of easily accommodating a vast number of leather tents and horses. Life came to a standstill, gradually preparing for a long period of winter dormancy and forced, harsh snow isolation. This change in tactics brilliantly demonstrated the incredible flexibility of their thinking and their excellent ability to adapt to any changes. What was absolutely deadly in the summer always became the only real chance of survival in the winter. They never dogmatically followed a single rule, but reacted very sensitively to all signals from the environment. This pragmatic approach allowed them to make the most of any given state of nature's capriciousness. The river, once their worst enemy, instantly became their most reliable ally, warming them with its wood in the freezing cold. The logistics of the winter camp were no less complex than the proper organization of summer autonomous steppe treks. It was necessary to distribute all wood supplies very carefully to ensure they would last until early spring. The horses were switched to a diet of the tough bark of certain trees that grew exclusively in the warm river floodplains. Every member of the huge group knew exactly what their duties were to constantly maintain perfect order and warmth. Wintering by the river always demanded no less strict discipline than the summer trials of scorching thirst. The return to the high plateau occurred only with the very onset of spring's turbulent floods and warming. As soon as the banks turned back into a very muddy, sticky mess, the huge camps were instantly dismantled. The cycle repeated itself without fail, carrying everyone away from the dangerous greenery and the extremely unpredictable water. This eternal pulsation, this constant movement up and down, became the very heartbeat of the Great Steppe. Their history is a story of the perfect balance between risks and incredible opportunities. Seasonal migration ensured a constant rotation of territories and prevented the depletion of natural resources. The wisdom of their ancestors dictated a strict schedule, the violation of which was always punished by severe trials. They left behind a unique example of harmonious coexistence with the harshest of environments. Their strategy continues to inspire modern researchers with the logic of its unyielding solutions. The laws of the prairie tolerate no weakness, but generously reward those who are able to understand them. The experience of ancient nomads convincingly demonstrates that true safety is often hidden in the most counterintuitive decisions. A strict refusal to drink water in the height of summer always seems like utter madness to modern people accustomed to comfort. However, in the face of extremely brutal, constant competition, this step was the only sure way to preserve their lives. They consciously sacrificed the small for the sake of the great, demonstrating incredible willpower and immense physical endurance. This remarkable capacity for self-restraint is the most important lesson we can draw from their history. Each of the factors listed could, on its own, have been the primary cause of a serious military tactical failure. The boggy shore, limited mobility, and the loud roar of the water deprived them of the vital ability to detect threats early. Sudden floods threatened the loss of property, and dense thickets reliably concealed potentially deadly ambushes. The predictability of the route along the water made the camp an easy target for any attentive and cunning enemy. The stifling microclimate of the lowlands undermined physical health and severely damaged very valuable combat equipment. Taken together, all these factors formed a massive, insurmountable barrier for any rational and experienced steppe commander. The choice of the plateau was not merely a passive flight from danger, but an active strategy for complete dominance of the territory. On the high ground, they effectively utilized their main strengths: incredible speed, vast visibility, and unpredictability. They ruthlessly imposed their own rules of engagement on the enemy, forcing them to operate under conditions that were extremely disadvantageous. This brilliant asymmetric tactic allowed small groups to very successfully withstand superior forces. Modern tactics for small combat units largely echo these ancient and time-tested principles. The skillful use of terrain for concealment and a strict avoidance of predictable routes remain relevant to this day. The principles of maintaining stealth have not changed at all, since the days when the simplest bow was the only weapon. The human mind is always seeking the right ways to circumvent obvious dangers, turning its weaknesses into undeniable strength. The wisdom of our ancestors lives on in the manuals of the most modern elite special forces. Studying their methods reveals to us a remarkable level of understanding of the laws of a changing environment. They read the complex landscape like an open book, noticing the slightest nuances invisible to our blurred modern gaze. Their connection to nature was not at all mystical. It was deeply rational and incredibly practical. Nature was always their primary teacher, punishing them severely for the slightest inattention or unacceptable carelessness. The graduates of this extremely harsh school instantly became the most resilient and incredibly cunning warriors of their time. The mindset of consciously rejecting comfort shaped a particular type of character, one completely averse to compromise. People accustomed to enduring intense thirst and scorching heat never backed down in the face of an armed enemy. Their inner core, tempered by the steppe winds, was absolutely unbreakable by any external circumstances. They took genuine pride in their harsh way of life and looked down on those who naively sought the easy way out by the water. This pride was their most powerful spiritual armor, reliably shielding them from despair in the most difficult times. Their history forever shatters stereotypical notions of the supposed primitiveness of the ancient cultures of the boundless continent. Behind the outward simplicity of their way of life lay an incredibly complex and well-oiled mechanism of social and tactical interactions. They created the most ideal survival system, which functioned like clockwork for centuries. Only a radical change in the entire world could break this natural mechanism of adaptation, honed over centuries. But their legacy continues to amaze our imagination with its absolute logic and unmatched tactical effectiveness. We must learn from them the ability to view the world without the rose-colored glasses of naive illusions. Security always demands enormous sacrifices, and comfort is often nothing more than a beautiful but extremely dangerous lure. Those who survive are those capable of seeing, in time, the hidden threat behind the attractive facade of stability and peace. This truth is absolutely universal and applicable to any era and absolutely any life circumstances. The memory of those who successfully turned the harsh steppe into their home deserves the deepest, most sincere respect. The experience of the ancient warriors of the Great Plains remains a shining example of the triumph of human intellect over circumstances. Their invisible trails have long been overgrown with tall grass, but the principles by which they were laid are still alive today. Every decision they made was driven by a love of life and an incredible sense of responsibility for their people. They proved that true strength lies not in conquering nature, but in understanding its laws. This story will forever remain a great textbook on survival in the most extreme conditions. What other survival secrets of indigenous peoples do you think remain hidden from our understanding? Suggest topics in the comments for future videos that you'd like to see on our channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss new fascinating historical studies and investigations.